show is sponsored by HiveMind CRM. It is more than just a CRM. It is a real estate and business mastermind that comes with an all-in-one CRM. You can have unlimited websites and users. You can call, text, RVM, and email all in one user interface. And you can set up custom automations for any type and multiple businesses. 65% of companies start using a CRM system within the first 5 years of business. Once implemented, the HiveMind will save you on marketing, give you more time, and make more money. One of our users had his first $100,000 month using our system in June. We want to see you automate and accelerate your business. Text us at 210-972-1842 for future meetings and, of course, to get our $1 course on how to make more than 6 figures on one land deal. You can schedule your free demo today at hivemindcrm.io.
Hey, welcome to today's episode. This is Daniel Martinez, your host of the Hive With Us podcast. I have a special guest today coming out of LA, but he's originally from Sweden. We have the Price Whisperer Sjofors, right?
That's right. You did a really good job and mentioning my name, and thank you so much for having me on the show.
First thing I want to ask is, when did you come to the U.S. and how long have you been in Sweden?
I grew up in Sweden and left it when I was roughly 30 years old to establish a company in Zurich in Switzerland. I ran that for several years until I eventually was bought over by my main competitor that was a Japanese company. And I ran their European subsidiary out of London for several years before I eventually came here to the US and established a division of a fairly large company and built that up and so forth. And then I had another 4 CEO positions after that.
That is amazing. One of the big reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast, yes, I want to talk about your main niche. I always like talking to different people around the world because you get different insights. Businesses ran almost differently in different countries, in Europe especially. I'm really curious, and I'm sure my listeners are curious too. So, what is I know, in Germany, they have really strict work hours, and there's actually workers on the board of directors that operate the company hand in hand with the board of directors. So what is some key takeaways that we from European business that separate U.S. business in a lot of different ways?
Well, in a way, I mean, it's the same in Sweden, and I believe maybe in other countries as well in Europe that you do have the trade unions are much stronger than they are here, and they do have representation on the board, because at the end of the day, the workers in a company and the management of the company and the owners of the company they're all in the same boat, right?
Yeah.
They all really want the same thing, which is a successful company, because that will benefit everybody, For a while here, up till about 2 years ago, I was involved in a joint venture company back in my native Sweden. I got involved because I got sort of nostalgic, but I went over there very frequently and did presentations. And one of the big differences is that when you present for a management team over there, it's almost a 50-50 gender split, right?
Oh, wow.
Whereas here in the US, you're lucky if you have 1 female or maybe 2 female out of 10 in a management team, which is really sad, because it's been actually statistically proven, that companies with a gender balanced board and management team do much better than those that are male dominated.
I'll attest to this, and I think for all the males aboard, sometimes we get in our own way, and females, they really help organize us in a lot of different ways.
Yes. Yeah,
so imagine if you hire more C-suite level executives, women is going to help organize you in a lot of different ways on that side too as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I also had a chance. I set up several joint ventures in the Far East, 2 of them in Japan, 2 in Korea, and 1 in Taiwan. So I also got a sort of an insight into how companies work there. Obviously very different than here in the US, for good and bad, One of the things that I saw a little bit of in Japan was, or at least sometimes more important than appear to be really busy than actually doing something productive, But having said that, one thing that really surprised me here when I moved to the US and had this experience from several, from Europe and Japan at that time, was how I found companies here very fear driven. People, they don't, and I'm generalizing, obviously.
Yeah. I still I like to hear the reasoning why. So they're fear driven, so they force production versus.
Well, no, not that so much, but people are, instead of they feel that they can't criticize the company. They
Okay.
can't criticize the decisions of their bosses, and they make decisions that are good for them personally, but maybe not good for the company. Now, again, this happens everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's just that I thought I saw it more here than what I've seen elsewhere. Here it's easy to fire somebody. It's not so easy in Europe or in Japan.
Even like right there, I mean, I hope people take notes of that. Hire more women. Make
Yeah.
sure your goals are aligned with your employees, because they're in the same boat as you, and they want you to succeed in most cases. They're not there
Oh
to
yeah.
make you fail or help you fail. So I
Yeah.
think it's huge when you're hiring as well. It's like, hey, I want you to win just as much as we want to win as well. So it's
Yeah.
a win-win scenario. I'll take that. I'll take those bits. I like I said, I like hearing new perspectives that I've never heard before, that are not even they're not even heard out here. Just because
Hmm.
U.S. business is like the only way to do business. Like, no, it's not. It's really not.
Yeah.
It's really not. So,
Yeah.
30 years old, you left Sweden. I'm 30 years old
Mhm.
right now, so
Mhm.
I can resonate really well with that. I think it's really cool, man. So, how long you been in the U.S. for since you were 30 years old?
No, no, no. This was, I mean, I'm going to age myself here because that was in end of 1985, I think it was.
Whoa.
I was tasked by my former boss and an investor to set up this company, and he funded it. But I've never started a company before. I've never been a CEO before. I've never developed an international business before, as we did, and it was done in Switzerland when I didn't know the language. I didn't know German, so I mean, I was scared out of my wits, but I was also excited in a similar fashion, because it was really it was really exciting, and I think I took that 4 years, 4.5 years I was involved in it, and I think I took it up to 7, 8 million, something like that.
That's amazing.
So it was very small, but still, and when I came to move up to London to run that subsidiary of a Japanese company, that was also very, very interesting, because there was a lot of, I was actually known as the hardest worker in the company. At least that's what they told me. And that was starting in 1990, when the Japanese were really sort of, how should I say, they were admired because of their work ethics and stuff like that. But it really had to do with that if they had 10 different tasks or 25 different tasks on their to-do list for a day, they did all 25. I did the 5 ones that actually mattered. you know?
So, something I really want to hit on, because I think us as like full entrepreneurs, they feel like they have to be the leader, they have to be the instructor. But one thing I really keyed in is that you were never the CEO. You're always subsidiary.
Well, that's not true. I mean, I was CEO of a subsidiary.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, I'm not trying to discount you at all whatsoever. I'm just saying that somebody else brought you in on their vision, and it seems like you're like the integrator, which person actually got the stuff done, in my opinion. So
Um,
most
yeah,
businesses
you
like
can say that. Yeah.
visionary and there's a book called Traction. They talk about this a lot. Is the visionary and the integrator. And me personally, I'm an integrator myself. So I
Mhm.
really resonate with that statement a lot, because like we make whatever the visionaries' goals and whatever they're trying to accomplish, we actually are the back end that actually produces the results.
I think it was a shared vision,
Shared vision. Okay.
and it was a shared vision that developed over time, So and before I got involved, so the and at the end of it, I mean, in the UK, I quadrupled sales over 3 years actually.
That's crazy.
You know,
So
so
you have your skill, which is, I really want to talk about this. Your skill. So what your skill is, finding a price point, and you can probably explain it better. You're finding a price point that increases your sales revenue.
yeah, for the audience here, if you listen to this and not watching the video, I'm called the Price Whisperer, and that's a moniker that I didn't give myself, but I was called the Price Whisperer so many times. And the background is, we talked about my experience in Europe and Japan a little bit, but then here in the US, in all of these instances, we did experiments with pricing, and some of those experiments was very, very successful, meaning that next quarter revenues are up 25% or so. Others were real duds. And what I had learned in business school and can read about pricing was so academic and theoretical that it didn't help us understanding why some of those experiments worked. 15 years ago, actually, when I decided I was too old and too opinionated to be a hired gun, I set up my own shop, and I developed a process that would make every pricing, or I should say that makes every pricing experiment a success.
Okay.
And that is what we've done. And what we do is that we do willingness to pay research, and we help companies to make pricing a centerpiece of their business strategy. And when you do, you transform companies. Let me give you, well, first of all, I have a book that I really think that the audience should look for. It's called The Price Whisperer, with a subtitle of A Holistic Approach to Pricing Power. And pricing power is something that Warren Buffett coined. He said his most important criterion for investing in a company is whether they have pricing power. And then he defined it by saying that pricing power is the ability to increase price without losing sales volume. And that's what we're all about. You know, I sent out advanced review copies of the book to a whole bunch of prior customers, and said, ask them, can you say something nice? And one guy came back and said, his name is Jim Minaric. He said, you took our company from about 100 million to way over $1 billion. Thank you very much.
Wow.
And just some recent wins that we have. Company we worked with earlier this year, we took them from 200 to 250 million in 3 weeks. Another company we took from 15 to 35. That took about 6 weeks. I had a call with a prior customer CEO Friday, and he said, I'm just calling to thank you. Right? And he said, you completely transformed our company. Completely, he said. We're now thinking about pricing all the time. We're thinking about how we can increase prices, how we can defend those increases. And by doing so, we also keep our clients happier.
Yeah.
Right?
That is such a huge thing that not a lot of people understand, is that when you charge more, you can actually provide a better service.
Yes,
100%.
correct.
100%. I will stand behind that, and we're starting to see that too, which is one of the reasons why I want to have this conversation in general. So, and I think you doing those amazing numbers is crazy, and I think it shows that your time and wisdom in business in general to provide such results in such a quick turnaround is insane, literally insane. Which is why when I read your bio, I'm like, okay, we gotta have this conversation, because everybody always wants to learn how to make more money, but sometimes it's just as easy as dialing in your pricing, and you can provide a better service, which makes your customers happier, which are willing to pay more.
Yeah, I mean, look at Apple. They have enormous customer satisfaction, right?
Yeah,
and their phones are substantially more expensive than competition, and competition has not nearly as the same customer satisfaction. There's something called expectation bias. Expectation bias means two things, really. It means that if you're being presented with a price that you think is too low, you won't buy, right? And I mean, we've all been there. We hold something in our hands and we say, I kind of really want to buy this, but at this price, it can't be any good, right? Mm-hmm. And that is equally valid in a B2B and a B2C environment. And in fact, it was first discovered in a B2B environment in the 1910s, something like that. They did tests with office supplies. But then the other side of expectation bias is that if you buy something at a relatively high price, you expect a better result, and because of that, you get a better result. For example, it's been well proven that a 5-cent aspirin is not very good in curing your headache, but a 50-cent aspirin is.
I have a client who has done $4 million in revenue off of like $40 to $50 products,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all digital products. So the value is there. Him reaching the masses is there, but his whole, I'm not saying his opinion is wrong or right. He's definitely made the money to produce results. But one of the things that always gets me is like, if you make the price low enough, you can reach the masses. But if you make the price high enough, you can provide more value. So you have to find that balance.
Exactly. And that's the cornerstone of the methodology I developed when I started the company. And so what we do is willingness to pay research, which is digital polling of a marketplace. And we developed our own methodology to from where we can accurately predict sales volume and revenue at different prices. And again, this is just as valid in B2B as in B2C.
Yeah.
And maximum sales volume you get on that balance point that you just mentioned. Maximum revenue you always get at a higher price. Always.
Ooh, that was good.
And often when and then we developed our own AI software that takes all this data that we create from the marketplace, and this is something that clients come to us and say, I don't know if I have enough data. Well, Mr. Client, you don't have to have any data because we create it for you. When you get these charts that has the relationship between sales volume and price and revenue and price, and obviously to set the right price once you have that information is a matter of seconds. You either pick a price that's going to give you the highest sales volume because you want to leverage the network effect, or you pick a price that's going to give you the highest profitability, or you pick a price somewhere in between that makes sense for you. We typically always recommend the price for the highest profitability. And that is because with higher profits, you have a chance to, you feed that back into the company, and you can develop more product, you can serve your customers better, you can hire the best people, etc., etc.
Yeah, we've been, like I said, the reason why I wanted to have a conversation in general is because we've always been targeting mass trying to reach the masses. But at this point in our business, we're like, man, does it really make sense to go higher profits? Because, like I said, and I really want to key on this, hiring good people, because that actually serves the clients, and that's always been the end all in all goal, is providing a better service to the clients so they can get better results. So we're doing ourselves a good service by not pricing higher.
Yeah, probably. But you shouldn't get there, because there's also something called price walls. Price walls are psychological price points where a small price change generates a very substantial change in price volume. Those straight line demand curves that they teach you in business school is pure BS, and it has nothing to do with reality. Yeah. And just to give you an example here, just before the pandemic here, I spent some time with one of the VPs over at HP, the computer company. And they, in general terms, have a very simplistic pricing strategy. So what they did was they took this one computer model and they started to inch up the price $1 at a time just to see what happened. And they could increase it $17 without any change in volume. But if they went up $18, sales just fell through the floor. So what that means is that A, they had found a price wall, and secondly, they had been leaving $17 on the table. That sort of that makes a difference when you sell 10,000 of this computer a day, and it's a low margin device.
Yeah.
So are, and this is one of the things that comes out of the research that we do. We know exactly what they are and how substantial they are.
It's next level thinking that high level businesses are operating in, because they're trying to maximize every dollar. So this is a new thought process for me. So that's why I'm kind of taking it in right now.
That's okay.
It's really good. So is there like a methodology? Let's say a new company's trying to start out and they're trying to figure out where the price point is. Do they just kind of shoot from the hip at first and then kind of change it up and kind of get their own data together? Or is it
No, I mentioned some spectacular results here that we generated, and you get those results by taking a holistic view on pricing, because everything you do in the company affects how you can price, right? Different customer targeting leads to different ability to price. Different feature functions lead to different ability to price. Different marketing channels and messages leads to different willingness to pay, and therefore support different prices. And so does sales channels and methodologies. So once you take that holistic approach, then you transform the company, right? Now, if you're just a startup and you don't know anything of this, and you probably don't have the funds unless you're on sort of Series A to engage a company like mine. There's two things you can do. First off, we talked about price points that is too cheap, so you wouldn't, you would lose sales basically, and then price points that are too expensive, so people won't buy. So what you can do as a startup is that you can go out to your marketplace, and you need to find at least 25 potential customers who are not current prospects and not customers and not friends and family, right? And you describe your product or service. You ask them two questions, and the phraseology of these questions are very important. You ask them, now, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, whatever you want to call it, now you know what we do. What is a price that is so low that you think that we wouldn't hold our promises to you, that the product or service wouldn't be as good as it could be, right? And then you ask the same, again, make sure that the person understands the product or service, and then asking, and what is the price that is so high that it doesn't matter how good it is still too high, it's out of your budget, it's not feasible for you to buy it. When you then average the result of those 25 conversations for the low price and the high price, you have the range of where you should price the product. Right? And you probably want to price it towards the high end, right? Because that's going to give you more profits. And if you continue this and can get another 25 or maybe another 50, and this may take several months, if you do this, then you can start doing some segmenting, right? Maybe you find that people in this area, if you're selling something direct to consumers, people in this area have the averages that are a little higher than those in another area. Or maybe you find out that this gender tend to answer a little different than the other gender,
You start collecting your own data, and then you can figure out what to target. Because
compared to what we do in the company, it's a very blunt instrument, but it's better than just guessing or using cost plus or trying to set price similar to a competitor or something like that,
Yeah, that's the other part. You see a lot in businesses that competitors will try and price match or price compare, and I'm like, you're gonna race into the bottom because everybody's trying to compete on price when you should compete on value.
Yeah, exactly. And I've said that everything you do in the company affects how you can price, and And just to give you an example here, I won't mention the company's name, but it's a several billion-dollar company. And I spoke to them, and this was a few years back, and they said, we are not profitable, right? But our investors have given up. We have to become profitable. Otherwise, we're just going to disappear. And we're not going to get more money from investors. But we can't increase our prices because we get so much downward pricing pressure. People are complaining about our high prices, and we painted ourselves in a corner. We don't know what to do, right? And so I went to the company, and I looked. They had prices on their website, and I looked at the pricing page, and the pricing page was one of these long scrolling pages where it said, we are low price, we are dirt cheap, we are, you can't find any cheaper, we're the best but we're cheapest, so it set an expectation that when you eventually scroll down enough, that whatever prices you were presented with, they would be too high, right? So I told the company, that just remove that pricing page, and they did. And I spoke to the guy maybe a couple of months later, and he said, "Well, we followed your advice. We took away the pricing page. We doubled our prices, so now we're profitable, and nobody complains anymore."
That's crazy. It's something so simple, but it was right in front of their face. They can't see it.
Another thing that you should think about, and this is also obviously for the audience as well, is price anchoring, right? So the way we read as humans, obviously, well, as Westernized humans, I should say, we're not in the Arab world here, from top to bottom, left to right. So the first thing that you're going to see when you look at a price list or a menu or a pricing page on a website or a quotation or whatever, or price list or whatever it may be, is that to the left top, there's going to be a god-awful expensive thing, something that you may not ever sell. And it sits there only because as humans, we cannot not compare prices, right? Or compare numbers, I should say. And because of that, now you have a very expensive reference. And that means that the rest of the prices are going to appear more affordable.
Is that with the company's product? Like they might have a faux product that's expensive? Or is it like
it can be it shouldn't be a faux product, obviously, but it could be a bundle of something, right?
Okay, anything that's expensive more than we really want to sell.
Yeah, I mean, you probably sell as most. We want to have a good, better, best,
Yeah.
And it should be best, good, better, So, I mean, we did this for a trade show down in Anaheim a couple of years ago. We just said, you just need to flip the way the way you presented your prices on the website, and they said it increased sales with about 100K in the following week.
Wow. Okay. So just flip the way it lays out.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And I a good friend of mine is running a restaurant in Westwood, and he said, I need to increase my prices. I don't know how to do. And I said, well, what do you have that is really, anyway, there's some kind of fish dish of some very exclusive fish that he put up in that left corner, and then he increased the rest of his menu prices with 15-20%, and sales went up. And he was pretty expensive from start.
I'm gonna implement that immediately, because I think that was a good one right there. That was a really good tip right there. I'll give you that one. Wow. Yeah. Oh man, that was good. I like that one.
This is these kind of things is I mean, I developed this process and learned about this when I really developed the process and learned some of these things when I started the company 15 years ago. But then 5 years ago, roughly, I got wind of something called behavioral economics. I didn't know it existed, but I've now learned what behavioral economics is, and bottom line is that we are leaning on three Nobel Prize winners, right? What we do is the practical implementation of folks who've gotten Nobel Prizes.
Okay.
You know? And it's behavioral economics is all about how we make decisions. And because we are not robots, as a seller, you can always affect how that decision is made, which is one reason why advertising work.
Do you have advertising tips as far as like a lot of people they drive sales through promotions,
Mm-hmm.
50% off, 20% off, and you always sit at the grocery store like they might have raised the prices and then given a discount, and it's still the same price it was before to test the product and see how well it does. Is there any tips you have on that type of strategy?
Well, grocery stores are maybe they're a sort of animal by themselves, but in general terms, you shouldn't in promotions, because again, in that process that we developed of measuring willingness to pay, we can also see how discounts affect willingness to pay, and we can predict sales volume at different discounts. And rarely will you sell more if you discount more than 20%. You will just leave more money on the table. And typically, the most effective discounts in that optimizing a higher sales volume with a minimization of the profits that you give away is between 15 and 20%. And further, for example, store brands, if we talked about that, should not, if they are being priced at prices that are more than 15% cheaper than the branded brand, sales volume will not be where it should be. You will see less sales volume if they're lower in price, because they set that expectation. Can't be any good.
Can't be any good. They got the bias.
Yeah, exactly.
Bias. Okay, so man, this is. Is there a price point where if they raise their prices too much, that it's going to deflect any customers from buying?
Yeah, of course. And like I said, we talked a little bit about these price walls. And if you raise your price and you cross one of those price walls, if you're really unlucky, you can lose 30-40% of your sales volume. So it's absolutely crucial to know where they are.
Okay.
On the other hand, sometimes price walls can be minor, and yes, you may lose 5% of your sales volume, but your prices are 25% higher.
Yeah, it's a give and a take.
Yeah, but the key is that, and I mean, we talked much about the price points, but it's that holistic view that really makes the big difference, and that's why many of our clients have had such spectacular results, right? Because it's not only price. Yeah, you can change the price, and that may give you some additional revenue, but you need to make sure that you targeting the customer category or the customer segment or the customer persona, whatever you want to call them, that will lead to a higher revenue, higher profitability. That you're using the feature, functions, and benefits in your communication that leads to higher revenue. That you're using the marketing channels and marketing messages that leads to higher revenue, and sales channels and sales methodology that leads to higher revenue. And of course, that your pricing strategy is stratified in some way that leads to the lowest possible sales friction and the highest possible revenue. You don't do that. Let's say that people say, I'm going to do some price testing. Okay. So they test different price points, but maybe they do that to a customer category that from where it doesn't make a difference.
Price targeting has to match your ad targeting because of
everything has to match. Yeah, and I mean, imagine that you're going to test, say, 8 different price points, 4 different customer categories, 3 different marketing channels, 6 different marketing messages, 3 different sales methodologies, 4 different sales channels, and you end up with 8,000 or so combinations.
Yeah.
And you can't test that. By the time you're done testing, the market have moved on, and whatever you did is irrelevant.
So simplified is better. That way you can see yes or no results versus varying.
Well, no, I didn't say that. I said that simplified result. I mean, to do this simple is to use guesswork, or to use some kind of sort of just follow competitors and so forth.
Yeah.
And following competitors leads to commoditization, and then you have lost all your pricing power, and you enter the commoditization death trap.
No.
Something that you want to avoid.
So let's talk about the commoditization death trap, because that sounds interesting to me. Because I feel like a lot of companies, they fall in this pit. They fall in this pit of, I want to be just like them but do more, and I'm like, no, just do your own thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's funny how let me tell you a story here. A while back, maybe a year ago, so I went on to Amazon, and I wanted to buy one of these blood pressure measurement thing. There's thousands of them, right? And as I scrolled, I suddenly realized that, okay, here's one of these devices, and it's, I don't know, $26 or whatever it was, or $35 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, 2 pages further down, I saw exactly the same device with a different brand, and it was like $16. It was half the price, right? Now, they were differentiated. The more expensive one, they had better description, they had better photos, and so forth. But you can clearly see that it was the same product with just different brands from 2 different channels. So obviously, one is more profitable, right?
Very, very much profitable.
So the cheaper one was just a sort of a Google translation from Chinese, whereas the more expensive one actually had a real copywriter that had written the description and so forth. So, but I bought the cheap one.
Well, it's because you're the price whisperer. You can see through the pricing.
Well, I read the expensive one's description, and then I bought the cheap one.
So we can't test products on you, apparently.
No, but the what I'm saying is that it was pure fluke that I managed to see that there were that there were 2 products that obviously were the same. But then again, there's a brand leader in this category, and they also have what look like identical products, and they are like twice or 3 times the price of the more expensive version of the product I mentioned, because they have developed brand value. And once you develop brand value, and what is a brand? Well, a brand is a promise of quality and benefits. That's what a brand is. And because of that, I said, if prices are too low, people won't buy it, right? And and because the brand is a promise of quality, it allows them higher prices.
I'm writing this down. A brand is a quality of price. A brand
A brand is a promise. A brand is a promise of quality and benefit. And this, if we go back to behavioral economics here, it has been found that as we make our purchase decision, our fear that the purchase is not going to be right, that the quality is not going to be right, is 2.25% stronger than our expected benefit, right? And that's why brand works, right? because they promise you, the brand promise you that benefit and quality that you may not get in a non-branded product.
I wrote that down because I like having meaningful conversations because you always get a good nugget, and that was it right there. So I had to write it down before I forgot. It's like that one was so good. That was so good because it's one of those things where like I drive really hard on the branding because we're trying to deliver quality benefits. It's so good right there. I'm gonna put that somewhere on my website. I hope I'm gonna credit you on that one. That was so good. It's so good. And like I said, I like. Man, I think this has been an amazing interview in general. I hope our audience took some of those nuggets because, like, I tell people all the time, is the podcast is for me. It's not really for anybody else. Everybody else gets to partake in the information, but it's really for me because a lot of these guests that I bring on, I'm learning something from them, and that's really what I care about. So sorry for everybody else. You're just a fly on the wall. That was such a great interview.
Well, I encourage you and also the audience to go to Amazon and look for my book. It's called The Price Whisperer, and it's already a bestseller. You know, I drill deep into all these topics that we talked about here, and many, many more topics that we haven't talked about. And it's called The Price Whisperer, with a subtitle, A Holistic Approach to Pricing Power. It really teaches people how to look at pricing from a very different, it's not a number, right? Yeah. Well, it's a number too, but when you look at pricing from a holistic point of view, it's much more than a number, and that's why it makes such a huge difference.
Well, go check out his book and Sjofors.com. This has been an eye-opening interview. I'll have to listen to this interview again because I feel like this conversation is a high-level conversation that a lot of people are ready to listen to. So if you didn't find value now, you might find value later. And it's you are ready to hear like conversation. And that's usually how some things go. So that's how sometimes it goes sometimes, where like a lot of people are ready to receive information, but their mind wasn't ready for it. So you sometimes have to listen to it over and over again, and it'll make sense at a later time.
Very.
The show is sponsored by The List Guys. Do you need more leads in your local or virtual market? 1 in 10 small businesses don't invest in any kind of marketing. The List Guys have over 35 plus list types to choose from, and you can mix and match any list or criteria. We also use the skip trace list and provide up to 7 numbers and email addresses. Every list you purchase will be scrubbed against previous purchases. The List Guys are here to save you time. Contact the List Guys today at www.1listguys.com. That's www.1listguys.com.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming. I hope one day we'll cross paths in the future since we're both in the LA area.
I hope so.
But I appreciate your time and thanks for coming out. And it's such an eye-opening conversation for me.
Well, all right. Well, I'm happy it was, and it was a great pleasure to be on the show. So thank you for your time.
With that, go like, subscribe, go listen to more episodes like this on all channels. We're here to provide value in a lot of different ways. So if you like our episode, go share it with your friends.